shortly by, oh, okay, now we are live. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. We appear to be live now, and welcome. My name is Stephanie Dogfoot, also known as Stephanie Chan. I am live streaming straight from the Substation tonight as part of Spoken Bird and the Substation's collaborative performance poetry show called To Malaysia with Linebreaks. And I'm extremely excited to be presenting this all the way from an actual arts venue. It's quite exciting. So To Malaysia with Linebreaks is a really special show in the sense that I've gotten poets from different countries to work together and actually to go, okay, backing up a bit, if it's your first time at a Spoken Bird event, welcome. Do leave us comments. Do leave any kind of comments that you feel like. Feel free to ask questions. Let us know you're here. Leave reactions. Share this. Really excited to have you here. I can't see who is here. I can't see how many people are watching, but just really excited that this can happen, that this is indeed happening. And so Spoken Bird is the monthly poetry night I run from Singapore. We started in 2017 in August. We're still going strong in spite of various venue changes, in spite of the circuit breaker, in spite of the pandemic. And we've moved into an online kind of event. And with that brings its own challenges. With that, we've missed a lot of the live shows, a lot of the just microphones, bars, sticky floors. It's a lot that we do miss having, well, has it been nearly 9 months of no live poetry events, but with the online shows have come incredible new opportunities and incredible new possibilities for poetry, for performances, for international collaborations. And so this show is supported by the National Gallery and proposals for novel ways of being, as well as the Substation's own very special series, We Are Not Going Back, We Are Moving Forward, which rethinks and imagines new ways to think about art in a post-COVID kind of era. And so they approached me to see if I wanted to work on any kind of project with them. And so I proposed this. And so To Malaysia with Linebreaks is a very special show. The first time I did anything of this sort was in collaboration actually with the Melbourne Spoken Word Festival back in July, where I brought a bunch of Singapore poets to collaborate with a bunch of poets from Melbourne, and they created some incredible pieces together. And so now with this opportunity, I thought, why not look a bit more regional? Why not look a bit more towards Southeast Asia to see what kind of new links, new similarities, new kinds of ways of imagining the world, new kinds of communities we could kind of forge with more people being online, with more literature, more writing, more art being online. How does that break down borders? How does that break down barriers between countries, and also increase connections between people? So To Malaysia with Linebreaks is an incredible event, as I've said before. Incredible event because I basically got 3 poets from Singapore to write in collaboration with 3 poets from Malaysia. And these are 3 poets that I find very exciting from Singapore, and 3 poets I find extremely exciting from Malaysia. And I thought, they've never met before, but I've met all of them. Why not bring them together, see what they come up with, and see what kind of connections we can make. And the 6 of them are here with us tonight. I'm extremely excited to show them to you, to show what kinds of new work they created. There will be call and responses. There'll be duet poems. There will be Pantones, all kinds of things. And the really cool part is at the end of their performances, we'll have a small Q&A. And so audience members, if you're watching, you can also feel free to ask questions. I will ask questions about the process, about what it's meant to them, what new things they have come up with. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce to you the poets who you'll be seeing tonight. So first of all, There'll be 3 pairs. And so yeah, if you could help me to bring them up. We have Mei Chong, and who is writing in collaboration with Margaret Davadson. So Mei Chong, okay, so we'll just have everyone here. And also with me in the studio today is Dustin Wong. It's pretty crazy just having poets in the same room for and stuff. That's quite wild to think about. That's not a possibility, I guess, now. And but yeah, so from Malaysia, we have Lily Jamaluddin, we have Mei Chong, we have Dinesha Karthigesu, incredible spoken word people who write huge variety of work, all very, very different kinds of writers, but all people who I find are really exciting voices. And from Singapore, bringing up Singapore, we have Margaret Davadson. We have Wahid Al-Mamun performing live from Chicago. Thank you so much for waking up so early to be with us. And right, so going from the furthest away to the nearest to me, we have Dustin Wong. So yeah, welcome everyone. You have seen them. And yeah, so now you know who they are, and you'll get to hear from them one by one. All right. So now, without any further ado, let us move into our first pairing. Okay, our first poet of the night is none other than, okay, I'm just gonna wait for everyone to leave. Bye. Bye. All right. Oh yes, I'm gonna move this here. That's great. It's gonna pretend like he isn't here. So really excited. Welcome, Margaret. Welcome. So Margaret is someone that I met through Singapore Rimo, and basically just bring out more and more incredible stuff every time I see her, and just really, really excited to see what she has come up with. I'll read a bit of the bio. Margaret Davadson is a Singaporean poet whose work has appeared in anthologies including SG Poems 2017 to 2018 and Anima Methodi, shortlisted for the 2018 National Poetry Competition and the winner of the 2018 NTU Creative Writing Competition. Margaret contributed the winning piece of the 2019 Hawker Prize to the Journal of Zoos. Very, very credible, highly decorated poet. So, but yeah, how have you been, Margaret?
I have been all right. I'm coming to the end of the semester, and it's been a little while being back in a campus. Yeah. I'm really excited to be here tonight. This is the first time I'm performing since COVID all started.
Oh wow! Okay. Glad to have facilitated this. Are you doing live classes yet? Or?
I have some live classes. So it's been fun enough offline. That's been really exciting.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So, are you ready to?
Yes.
Perform your piece. All right, and I will remove myself and take it away. Okay, I'm just waiting to be removed from the screen.
Okay, so I'm going to be reading a duplex. May also wrote in a repetitive form, so that's the look we're going for tonight. Doom Scroller's Duplex, an odyssey with Nostos. This homecoming, by any other name, is stalled at the border of doorway and door. At the threshold, a doorway endures what must be allowed. A siren is singing, as sirens must nowadays sing, out loud, with no teeth left showing through 3-layered cloth. 3 layers of skin, and not one left, marking the point past which blood should not flow. Blood does not flow beyond taped lines on floors. It wells in the creases, air pockets, and folds. Every day a fresh crisis as pockets unfold, as things barely buried are shuddering still. Before I am buried, I shudder, stay still. No one at home knows how to weave shrouds. I dispose of my shroud before I come home, loop loose-ended meetings to tassels untorn. I suture lost endings, turn tatters to seams. I look into waters where nothing can breathe. No one remembers in waters that breathe. Though bees wash up humming of happier shores. Wash up buzzing through a litany faster than overturn undertow, bottle intact. Then overturn undertow, unbottle the facts, butterflies dreaming of something they knew. I daydream in butterfly, knowing no end. Scar tissue clings onto branches, no ends. A root of scar tissue cleaves into soil in the end, splits itself, laughing, in two. Soil in the end is the basis of harbor, displaces potential, holds space for dock. This place holds potential for space, dock's soft corner from starlight encompasses land. Soft corner of midnight encompassing lands between crater and pit, diffusion begins. Between crater and pit, confusion begins. Light surges through a body with no breakers, brokers no light, in a body unbroken. Recover your losses at membranes uncrossed. Recovery fails when a membrane is crossed. Give the sirens whatever they want. All you want is some siren voice singing this homecoming by any other name. Steph, we can't hear you.
Okay, but yeah, thank you so much. That was incredible. I love the how musical it was, and I definitely want to speak to you about different aspects of it in a bit. But thank you so much for the piece and just the incredible performance of it.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah. All right. So next, I'm really excited to bring on the poet that Margaret wrote in collaboration with, that she was inspired by, and I guess inspired as well. The one and only May Chong. Just waiting for May Chong.
Hello.
Hello.
I am here.
Hello. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome. Hello.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for being a part of this. And I think I first met May at the Georgetown Lit Fest at the Poetry Slam. I think at first
2018.
2018. Yeah. About almost exactly 2 years ago.
Yeah, pretty much.
Actually, the Georgetown Festival is happening now online.
It is happening right now online. There's a bunch of podcasts. You can check them out on Spotify as well as social media. Okay,
all right. Okay. Yes. Good. So definitely check that out. And I'll tell you a bit more about May. Okay, hang on. Getting a bio. But yeah, I was just simply blown away by your poetry when I first heard it. And just been really exciting, just like seeing how prolific you are and how much you have been writing, and especially all the sort of like fantasy kind of poetry that I've been seeing. That's been really, really cool. So here, May Chong writes poetry to tackle the heart and tickle the soul. She has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and the Riesling Award and published in multiple venues, including Strange Horizon, Apparition Literary, Anathema Magazine 2020, an anthology by Pixie Novo, and My Lot is a Sky by Math Paper Press. When she's not at the keyboard, she enjoys bird watching. Oh, that's really cool. Didn't know that. Great stories and terrible puns. May's first microchat book, the nature-themed Seed Star Song, is out now from Ghost City Press. And I'm really excited to hear your piece, and so take it away.
Thank you. All right, everyone. I have a sequence of Pantones for you tonight, and it goes like this. Spills the sun across the dew. Hark the hunter at your door. If you wish to build the new, learn from what has come before. Hark the hunter at your door, sharp as shadow creeping in. Learn from what has come before. Memories of skin on skin. Sharp as shadow creeping in. Iller winds caress the land. Memories of skin on skin. The single breath, the doubled hand. Iller winds caress the land. Gajah wars and raging runs. The single breath, the doubled hand. Thorns that rise through sinless suns. Gajah wars and raging runs. Plandok falls and weeping dies. Thorns that rise through sinless suns. monsters born from shuttered eyes. Blind oak falls and weeping dies. Tap from tears a blessed balm. Monsters born from shuttered eyes, knives that cut the wielder's palm. Tap from tears a blessed balm, carve the grave in stone and sand. Knives that cut the wielder's palm, bleed their rust upon the land. Carve the grave in stone and sand. Who will bear the final pall? Bleed their rust upon the land. Worlds have choked upon their gall. Who will bear the final pall, as some spotted starling scolds? Worlds have choked upon their gall, as some other plain unfolds. As some spotted starling scolds, clear as bells the magpie sounds. As some other plain unfolds, from the eye of broken bounds. Clear as bells the magpie sounds, sings a song of summer's sending. From the eye of broken bounds, made, remade, and never ending. Sing a song of summer's sending, render dust the tyrant's throne, made, remade, and never ending, while the flaw is in the bone. Render dust the tyrant's throne, crack the cage and sprout the vine, while the flaw is in the bone, break the loop and bind the line. Crack the cage and sprout the vine, loose the knot that binds your tears, break the loop and bind the line, wash away the words and years. Loose the knot that binds your tears, if you have a world to write. Wash away the words and years, if your heart is in the fight. If you have a world to write, steer until the break of day. If your heart is in the fight, spark the change that clears the way. Steer until the break of day spills the sun across the dew. Spark the change that clears the way, if you wish to build the new.
Thank you so much, May. That was gorgeous. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
And I loved the rhythm and the repetition and stuff. And yeah, thank you for that. And all right. So now is the time that I get to ask questions. All right. So welcome back to Margaret. And so, okay, first question, I guess I would have asked Margaret this. I wanted to ask, May, how are things in Malaysia now? What's going on?
What's not going on? Well, the politicians are still messing around post coup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't really been sticking my head in the news lately. But what I hear is pretty messy.
Let's see. And how has the what's the deal with like the MCO now?
Well, basically after so they had some state elections in Sabah. Just as things were calming down, a bunch of politicians went over. They came back, they didn't quarantine, and now we're back past 1K cases daily again. So a couple of states went into extended shutdown. My home state was one of them. I was out of state at the time, and I've been out of state living with my in-laws ever since.
Oh wow. Okay. See.
Yeah,
and how have you been? Yeah, I guess how have you been coping with like the MCO and everything?
I mean, I'm in a reasonably good place at the moment. But it's still tough trying to work from home and maintain that concentration while the world sort of burns around you.
Mm. And are you in KL at the moment? Or?
Right now I'm in Negeri Sembilan.
Negeri Sembilan. Okay.
Yeah. And I shall be here for the foreseeable future unless they decide to relax the travel restrictions.
Okay. And is it the case so you can't cross state borders now?
You can't cross state borders. If your state is under restrictions, you can't cross district borders.
Oh wow.
So yeah.
That sounds
everyone like basically stay at home, don't move.
Oh man. Well, so I wanted to ask also, Margaret, how have you been like coping, dealing with like circuit breaker and everything?
It's really weird to think that it's been happening for less than a year, because every time I think about it, it feels like there have been years just happening since.
Yeah.
I think about like April, and it's like a completely different universe from where I am now.
Yeah.
I think Singapore has been trying to like struggle towards more freedoms, and I think that's kind of coming back to bite them a bit. But we'll see how that goes.
We just had our first community case, or like first.
The second one today, like we've had a community transmission from our.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah. And so it's slowly coming back. We don't know what's going to happen, but I guess it's like things are both relaxed and yet strict. Like they're not going to open everything up for a while, I think. But yeah, so I guess the other thing I wanted to ask, how has the pandemic affected the way that you create work, the way you've been writing? Like for myself, I've actually not been really writing a lot of poetry since April, and I've been writing other stuff, trying to write other stuff. But yeah, I wanted to know what's it been like for the two of you.
I mean, between the day job and the freelance, I've been trying to work on more poetry this year, because before all this happened, I said, well, this year I'm going to try and submit a lot more places. So I have been submitting. It's just that right now I'm submitting a fair bit of old work. Coming up with new pieces, and finishing new pieces has been a bit difficult. But what I have managed to put out, I find I'm focusing a lot more on both hope and anger. Basically, it's between those two.
It's not a bad combination, I think.
Yeah.
It's all right. And Margaret?
I just want to say, May, I really enjoy that combination of hope and anger in your work. Like, I read it and I was like, that's so cool having those two together. Yeah. I think in some ways it has been good for like my ability to sit down and write. Like Steph, you mentioned we met through Singapore, which is this. It's April, and Singaporeans sit down and try and write a poem every day. And this year was the first time I actually managed to finish that. Like I did write one poem every day.
Congrats.
And like I'm still really pleased about that. I've always only done like 2 in that month. But yeah, writing just for general things without the peer pressure of the community has been a little odd. Yeah. It's really nice to be here. Like I used to really enjoy coming to events in person, and that would be like a space. And it's been wonderful tuning into online events as well, but the sense of space is just so different.
Yeah. That's one of the things I want to do when everything opens back up. I want to go to an open mic again. With the requisite, post event kopitiam and mama session.
Yeah, definitely. And okay, and I wanted to also ask about your pieces. I really love how lyrical they both were, and how you're both able to use like repetition and like sort of rhythm and almost like music. I feel that just like a line running through both. And I feel like both look pretty hopeful. Maybe Margaret's a bit less hopeful, but I felt that there was something like really tender and like really I don't know. Yeah, I felt it was like sad, but also I felt a glimmer of hope in there. And I really love the line "Homecoming by any other name," which is how it ended. And like May, I loved like the whole things like the memories of like skin on skin as well. I thought that was really,
How long has it been since we last hugged people, right?
Yeah. But so I want to know what's the process been, because I basically had the power to put 2 strangers together. I knew, so I just wanted to know. Yeah, so how has it been?
Actually, it's been the first opportunity I've had to collab with a poet like this outside my own local writing circles, and I feel that while both our schedules unfortunately conflicted a lot. Like Margaret was studying for her exams, and I had like a ton of freelance and day jobs I've plopped to my lap. But I think that once we were able to get together, we able to incorporate each other's lenses and ways of thinking, and I think that informed both our pieces today.
May originally suggested working on Pantones, and I thought that was really exciting. And in the end, it turned out that I can't quite think in rhymes, so I ended up twisting off into another repetitive form. But I really enjoyed the opportunity to read your work and respond to it. Like, I really enjoy your attention to animals and wildlife, especially, and I think the way they populate your piece is just so wonderful.
Thank you. I enjoy the way you play with language, assonance, alliteration, and like I said, a lot of the images that you put down during the planning phase were really interesting, and I hope you see some of them in our work as well.
Thanks for putting us together, Steph.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. And I guess, do you have questions for each other?
Actually, what are you studying now? Sorry, I have to break out the auntie. What are you working on at the moment?
So I'm in my final year of a degree in linguistics with a second major in literature and hopefully minors in creative writing and gender and diversity. It's a mouthful. And I'm actually wrapping up an application for a master's now, which will hopefully connect linguistics and literature. So I'm looking forward to that.
That sounds really cool. I look forward to see how you get on with that.
Thanks. What have you been working on?
Not much, to be honest. I mean, I'm still trying to keep up my schedule of submissions. But at the moment, it's basically the same old routine of writing articles, writing social media posts, writing website copy. So it goes.
Yeah. In terms of writing, I've been curious. Like, you write science fiction, speculative fiction as well, right?
I do mostly fantasy at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantasy. How do you feel like that feeds into the way you write poetry? Like, are they completely separate for you, or do they blend?
Is the fantasy disparate from the actual writing of poetry? Interesting question. I think you do have to be in a particular frame of mind to focus on the speculative element. But sometimes it does not. You try and write something that's spec, and it ends up a little bit more literary, or you start writing things that are supposed to be like literary, and fantastic elements creep in. So sometimes it depends on when the poem ends up taking you.
Nice.
But yeah, it's fun. Sometimes you get to write about werewolf girlfriends and vengeful ghosts. It's fun.
Oh yeah, that was one of your poems I saw. Like the werewolf. I love my werewolf girlfriend.
Things love about my werewolf girlfriend. Out now in Fantasy Magazine. Yay!
Excellent. Actually, okay. My one last question for May. Like, how do you? I feel like you are very diligent and about submitting stuff. So like, how do you get to that that sort of diligence?
Well, basically what I ended up doing was I keep a spreadsheet of venues I submit to every year, and I thought this year I want to try and at least get to 1 or 2 venues a week. So I started like this. So I actually like doing spreadsheets. So I sort of took advantage of that. Okay, let's make like a really cool spreadsheet where I can track like where the work is going, whether it's a simultaneous sub, is it paid, is it fiction, is it poetry, and so I basically continued filling out that sheet until now. And it's nice because you see for yourself the things that you're doing in numbers. You say, okay, I've gotten I've really done, let's say, 20 poems this year. I think I can do another 5, or I've been to a certain number of venues. Let me see if I can surpass it by a particular time. So it's basically competing against myself to keep on putting work out into the world.
Oh wow, that's really
Yeah,
cool.
and there's a particular challenge where you're supposed to get 100 rejections a year. Basically it means that yes, you are getting 100 rejections, but that also means that you've submitted 100 different pieces, or maybe to 100 different places, and you now know where they won't fit, but that narrows the field for you to get a further successful submission, a successful publication opportunity in the future.
That's really cool. So the secret is sort of just about motivation and numbers, spreadsheets.
Just keep swimming, basically.
Just keep swimming.
Which is difficult, but it is absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much to May and Margaret. And so thank you. That was really, really cool. And so how can people follow you both on social media?
Well, I'll drop the links in the Facebook comment in a moment. On Facebook, you can find me at facebook.com/MayChongWrites, and on Twitter, I am May Says. That's MAYSAYS.
If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm IFIS20, so IPHIS20. If you want to catch me after it's the new year, it will probably be IFIS21. If you want to find my poems online, I have like a WordPress, margaretdevidasan.wordpress.com.
Excellent. So thank you so much, both of you, for the incredible pieces. Maybe I will find a way to share them in another form after this. So everyone
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care. And all right. So that was Margaret and May, our first pair. And next, I am very excited to welcome our second pair, starting with the one and only, who is right here, Dustin Wong. Okay, actually you can sit here. And all right, so Dustin Wong, and let me actually, before he joins, I'll just read out very quickly his bio. And bio. Where's this? Okay. Yeah. So Dustin Wong's work has been featured in A Luxury We Cannot Afford by Math Paper Press, 2015, Singapore Rimo, and the Crest Catalogue, Volume 1, Food and Sex, Words Lost and Found, Quarterly Literary Review Singapore, and the Eunoia Review. And they are also part of the writing group known as the Atom Collective. Contrary to popular belief, their favorite color is not green. And so everyone, please welcome Dustin Wong.
Right. Thanks, Steph. Right. So I don't know how I'm going to follow up to May and Margaret. They were really, really good, but I will try my best. So what I've written with my counterpart in Malaysia, Lily, is we asked ourselves some questions about what was it that Steph posed us a question online in email, actually, when all this first started. I'm just looking it up right now. And she asked us, to imagine new ways of being. So Lily and I kind of just went off on that, and we wrote a whole bunch of poems in response to that. So this is my response. So I wrote 4 poems, and it's a combination quartet. So the first one is titled Departure, and it goes like this. In Woodlands, a train pulls out of the station, and at this hour, everything else seems still, despite the swift departure. Even now, all the clocks have stopped. Even the sands have stopped in the hourglass. Is this too a form of departure? When I say I am leaving, I do not mean that my body is going anywhere. No. What I mean to say is that I'm standing at the door, hand on the handle, feet swinging like a pendulum, between here and there, trapped in suspended departure. I remember one rainy evening. On the TV, a couple was on the verge of waking up, and me, having crossed that line, sat cross-legged under a duvet, watching both the drama off the screen and outside the window. And there's a kind of divorce here, separate from matrimony. where each moment leads to departure. And now I cannot breathe. Have you heard the cry? It echoes in the streets and the wards. A boot travels the world to look for a neck to stamp on. And who am I in the face of such calculated menace? If I hide, I am complicit, and if I face it, then you could say that I am on the hunt for an early departure. Please, stay a while. We already don't have each other. Why take time away as well? If I could, I would stop all the clocks from running too. This has to be a different sort of violence, and a sort of ennui, in which we are all tied to the tracks before a train, dust in our lungs, forever 1 minute before departure. Pilgrim. When I say I look forward, what I'm really saying is I'm looking behind, and even in my prayers, my thoughts wander like a homesick pilgrim. Like how a pigeon remembers the way home. Like even in his sleep, he knows where north is, knows the way back to before, knows all the path of every pilgrim. I have seen the monks pray at Gong Ming San. Round and around they go, bowing on every third step, each uttered chant pulling heaven closer to earth. Except they say that heaven was already inside me, and no matter all her illusions, earth is just a shade of color, and somehow that I've always been a pilgrim. If every journey brings us back home, then why do we set out at all? Why bother to come back to that which never changes? And if only I knew that home never changes, but the contours of my desires do, and somehow they fold themselves into the shape of a homebound pilgrim. A flower unfolds and delivers a promise without words. And even then we cheer. After all, a forest starts from a single seed, and sometimes all we need is a little hope to go on by. And isn't this true? This ephemeral feeling, air to grasp onto, the stuff that powers a pilgrim. Everything ahead is hard-won. Gone if I hold it too close, fleeting if not focused on. Yes, it has always been one step ahead, and even now I can almost hear the monks praying in circles, we told you so. And by then I already know how the future comes back to us like a pilgrim. Migrant. In my vision, all of mankind is gone. Only our buildings remain. Only our roads remain. Our tunnels, shelters, wires. All these that were built by migrants shall remain. And even our island will disappear, having followed us into oblivion. And so dies Singapore, a place of fleeting migrants. I know we are the stuff of iron. I know it because blood is made from the stuff we import by the thousands. I know this because when I walk into a newly built building, it reeks of iron. And yes, I have breathed deep and found the blood of migrants. And remember the train from before, the one that promises to run over our necks, the one that holds us in suspense with the promise of an inevitable demise. What if I told you that everyone else lies on those same tracks, except that somehow we have shifted the spots closer to the trains and saved them for the migrants? Freed from work, we have gone crazy in our homes, and imagine those who are tied to labor, made to rest in boxes between. Are they tools to be put aside when it is inconvenient for us? How quickly we equate capital to convenience and convenience with migrants. I call them migrants because that is what they are before they are workers. I call them migrants because Singapore has had a long history of speeding them along. So ask yourself, is this what we will leave behind when everything else is dust in the wind? Our towels cut from bleeding hands, washed clean by migrants. And the last one, arrival. I have this memory. I was in a transitionary state of stress and someone asked me that what was it that I needed to facilitate my arrival. I also remember asking to where, but they didn't respond, only showed me there and then that the bed itself was a form of arrival. When I say desire is skin deep, what I mean to say is that I know the depth of my skin. Past the shores of tepid water and the bones of every impulse is a hunger that has learned to swallow itself. And it goes beyond eating, or even shame, and has learned to greet each new day as an arrival. Once I closed my eyes and found myself in an airport, hands pushed against the glass, knowing somehow what I was there for before I even knew it myself. And when I woke up for good, I was waiting for someone in the bright white lights of a semi-eternal hall of arrival. If I am to be cut me into a map. I want every inch of me to be found. Upend my heart into the mountain. Let my eyes watch over a paper sea where people come to look at my body. Let them know which way to go. I have always wanted to bring them to arrival. An arrival is the brother of departure, and I know him as well as her. In the garden before time, both looked at an apple and grew desire from its seeds. In the forest that came after, they built their first home, and there it has remained ever since. doors agape, windows shuttered, waiting on your arrival. Yeah, and that's it actually. Now passing the mic back to Steph.
Right. And yeah, thank you so much, Dustin. That was really incredible and really really beautiful, very different pieces and very emotive pieces. So, okay,
Thanks.
yeah. So we'll come back to them in a bit. And for now, I would like to bring on the person that was that I paired Dustin with. And so please welcome up Lily Jamaluddin. Hello.
Hello. Hi. Thanks so much,
Welcome.
Dustin. That was amazing. Okay. I guess.
Yeah, I'll just introduce you real quick.
Okay.
I think we first met at the Writers Festival. I think you came down to Singapore.
Yeah. That was it. Yeah. And I think like Mel introduced us, and that was really awesome.
Yes. And I think I got one of your zines at the Georgetown Festival, and it was really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
Something was the title had something to do with wolves.
Yes. Yeah. Between wolf and woman. Yeah.
Between wolf and woman. Yes, that was incredible. And I'll just read a bit about you. So Lily is a campaigner at Amnesty International Malaysia and moonlights as a writer/poet. She was featured as an emerging writer at the 2018 Georgetown Literary Festival and has been published in Halal If You Hear Me by Haymarket Books, Straits Electric by Gerak Budaya, and the Grinnell Review. In 2017, her short play, Our Compliance, took the Mercedes-Benz Creative Excellence Award at KL PAC's Short and Sweet Theatre Festival. Previously, she helped to run If Walls Could Talk, Kuala Lumpur's monthly spoken word poetry event, and facilitated poetry sessions with KL Unrepresented, multi-genre workshop exploring unrepresented narratives in Kuala Lumpur. So really excited to hear your piece. Take it away.
Cool. Thanks, Steph. Just to add on to a little bit of what Dustin said about our process, we took 4 questions that we came up with after like reading each other's work. And so those 4 questions were, where were you? What is ahead? What does the future look like? What will you leave behind? And what does your body need? So my poem is structured around the same 4 questions. Okay, cool. It is called Portrait of My Voice. Once, watching an oil rig go up in flames, I held a girl's hand and knew nothing would be the same for me. Not in this country where there are consequences to knowing, when there's an afterlife for every word you unearth from your body. And I used to think I'd rather not know. I'd rather not have words or the desire to find them. I was scared of not seeing what comes next, when what if it's pain? But now I understand. Hiding is pain. Being seen is pain. The one of them can offer something the other doesn't. Still, I understood my place in that thinking, that silence could be a type of victory, that compromise could also protect. I knew shame was a type of shelter, a family house used to guard the things we felt we could not lose, but dreamt one day we might, which is the tune underneath our national anthem, that flag we hang and defend, because what violence is violence if you're singing, and what words can't be swallowed if it's song. And I understand myself better now. I understand that hiding from the words that can't help but unravel from inside your body turns it into a sort of landmine. But the thing is, I love my body. I've worked my whole life for it to come alive, and I can't betray it like that. I'm a patriot of the body, and I want the birds inside me to live, to sing their mangled songs in their little chests with their little beating hearts and their little beating wings, saying even a small song is worth singing. Yes, even in this country with its costs, there's a burnt honey sweetness, I think, to listening to that small voice inside you that refuses to die. And my words, they refuse to die. They're not a national anthem. They'll protect me from little, but they'll keep me alive. I'll gather them like wood and flint in the night, a secret ritual of leaving behind that place in the body that refuses to know itself, and trusting the long life on the other side, which is actually what the body needs. That long life we cannot see with something sweet at the end of it. So that's me by the cove with my pocket knife, sparks hitting the shavings, small fireflies jumping into the blue flames that lick the evening mist, and then blue, and then orange, and then everything is hot and living and alight. And that's me. Thanks, Dustin. You guys are muted though, I think.
But yeah, thank you so much. That both of you, incredibly gorgeous pieces. And I really also love. Let me just shift my chair. I also really love your process. Just the 4 questions. How did you come up with that?
Yeah. Honestly, it was like a bit tricky to like come up with a process. I think. I mean, I don't know. Dustin maybe thought it was really easy, but I just feel like collaboration with poetry for me is generally kind of difficult. But Dustin was great. Like he suggested that we read each other's work, so we sent each other sort of I guess like maybe like 10 poems each, and then we got a sense of each other's style, and then we wrote poems like based on what we had read, which like didn't like really relate to each other. Yeah, and then from there we were like, okay, well, what if we focus on these questions based off of the prompt, and then we came up with this stuff. But yeah.
Cool. But yeah, I really like that. Just like coming up with answering the same questions in a sense, and just like sort of being inspired by each other's work. And I guess how are you doing, Lily? Like in like what's been going on at the MCO?
Yeah. Now better. I think the first lockdown was pretty tough. But now it just seems to be like sort of like a very extended wave of ambiguity. You know, now we're in sort of like a half lockdown where we can't really travel in between districts. Yeah, and I think just sort of like the general pandemic anxiety and ambiguousness, and yeah, just trying to deal with that.
Yeah. And how have you been coping? Has it been? Because I feel like generalized anxiety and ambiguity is like definitely what a lot of people can identify with.
Right. Yo, how have I been coping? I've been doing like a lot more yoga, I guess, which is sort of like very cliche, but and I started cooking, so that was really great. Yeah.
Brilliant. And how have you been coping?
I don't know about a lot of other people, but this sense of days blending into night, back to day again, like, you know, it's kind of a familiar feeling. I think because of the way I used to live my life. Like in my job, like I need to stay awake for like 48 hours at a time. And when you've gotten used to that kind of sensation, right? Like just watching the days go by in this circuit breaker it's a familiar feeling. Yeah. The upside is somehow during this time, like, you know, like, cause you can't go out, you can't go and meet your friends, you can't lobo around at the void deck anymore. So you end up reading a lot more. And when you read a lot more, you write a lot more. Yeah. Yeah, but I think like so far it's been pretty okay. Yeah. Other than that, my life has been more or less the same. Like, yeah, like somehow I managed to make it here to like borrow stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing that I noticed from like our conversations, that I feel like you're quite generative with your poetry, and even like your responses to the prompts. Yeah, I feel like it takes me quite a long time to decide what to say. And it takes me a long time to even just come up with one poem. So I think that's been really cool to watch. Like, just your ability to write. Yeah.
But I feel like for your poetry, right, it's like when I write, right, it feels like I've taken the concept of like the questions and I put it outside my mind and my body. But for you, I feel like, you know, you've kind of taken the whole thing inside and let it stew and really come up with something that's really, really, really close to you. Like when I read what you write, right, like it cuts straight through everything, and that's a really, really I think it's a difficult thing for me to convey, but you've done it so well, and I'm like, how?
Yeah, I mean, I really thought it was cool, like, to try this, what do I say, like, activity, exercise of collaboration,
Yeah.
because I think there's so many things we can learn from each other as poets, and I think, like, another thing that I really appreciate about Dustin is, like, his ability to find poetic moments in, like, urban life, you know what I mean? And I think his imagery of Singapore and of the streets, like, I think that's so, it's so powerful without being over romantic, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like for you, like, you know, like, part of me feels like I write so much about the things I see around me because I don't quite want to or know how to explore what I have inside. But for you, it's like, you know how to bring people in, and it's like, you know how confessional poetry works, right? When you share what you are inside, you kind of get people to explore who they are inside as well, and it's a two-way journey. You know, you're inviting people into your house, at the same time you're like getting them to think about, you know, how are they living their life in the spaces they occupy, and that emotive quality in your work, like the way you talk about national anthems and patriots as well, like how do you come up with that? Oh my god. Yeah, it's powerful imagery, and I really like it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I really love how your poem started. How you were like watching the oil rig catch fire, holding a girl's hand, and it's like one of those images you can't really forget. I feel.
Right.
Like really cool.
Yeah.
So how did you land on that image to start with?
Yeah, I feel like I guess writing poems like really comes from what's happening right now, right? And I think something that's been on my mind is like expression and like what you can and can't say in Malaysia for sure. And I think like one of those things for sure is like talking about sexuality and talking about queerness. And so I think that for me, sometimes queerness feels like sort of like points you can't turn back from. And I think that was an image where for me it was very strong, like you can't, or I couldn't turn back from that image. So that's where that image, I think, for me, what that meant.
I also really love the lines. Like I worked my whole life for it to come alive. Talking about your body.
Yeah, I love the line too.
So I snapping the fingers at that line.
Oh yeah.
It's a very good line.
Yeah. And that was really gorgeous. And okay, so I guess do you both have questions to ask one another? In terms of your process, or
I actually kind of want to know, like what is your actual writing process? You know, like do you word vomit or do you like slowly like write each and every couplet? Because I remember we were going through a bunch of drafts, and it's really interesting to see your process, like how you've managed to come like, you know, from the original draft to what we have now. And I think it's really, really incredible. I just want to know, like, you know, how do you get there?
Yeah, things changed so much. I think that was cool to see for me, like also to see your process and see how your poems have changed. What's my process? I guess, you know, this poem originally was a response to an Audre Lorde prompt for me, like, or, you know, it was hard for me to like get going. So there was this prompt that was going around the internet, and it was, what do you not have the words for yet? And so originally that poem, the poem that I wrote was like a response to that. And so in the original draft that Dustin first saw, there was a lot of like direct discussion to Audre Lorde. And I guess it sort of feels like, you know, I'm not a wood carver by any means, but I imagine it's sort of like if you have like a huge block of wood and you like kind of keep like carving it, and then it sort of gets to where you are, and then the closer you get to where you are, the more you kind of know where you want it to go. And so it like changes from the image of what you had in your mind originally. And then like halfway through, you're like, oh, actually, like what I want to say, what I want it to look like is like this. And then, yeah.
Well,
Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of the Michelangelo quote where, he says like, I saw the angel in the marble and then I set him free. But yours is like, I saw the angel in the marble but as you go along, it will slowly become something else. And I think it's incredible, like your journey from there to here.
Yeah.
I am
Thank you.
some of this. Yes.
Yeah. One of my questions for Dustin is maybe like, what do you feel are some of the themes or images maybe, but maybe more themes that you feel like you kind of gravitate back to?
Oh, things that I tend to lean back towards, as in like images I use all the time.
Or I guess maybe just what do you end up finding your poems are like about?
Okay, like I think I need to start from the form itself. Like this year, for some strange reason, one way or another, I've written a lot of ghazals. So like when I write a poem, I tend to squeeze it into the form of ghazal now. And I don't know if it's a good or bad thing because now everything I write is in a ghazal form. Yeah, like if you look at the 4 poems. And part of I think it's easier for me to write in that sense because like when you have a form, it's quite limiting, especially in terms of imagery and whatnot. Like at the end of the day, all my poems have to relate back to some sort of image of love or lost love or a sense of yearning, or heartbreak in a sense. And once you have that going, right, there's only like so many things I feel I can write about for now. Like there's the imagery of rain. I realize I write a lot about the rain, a lot about the weather.
Yeah.
You know how in the ghazal you have to stuff your name into the end? Like quite thankfully, my name has 4 words in it. And one of them can be in 2 words, dust and in. So I'm using to cheat my way through. One of my other names is him, Him. So so I managed to sneak that in as well. Yeah, and like I feel like once I have a scaffold there, like it's a lot easier to fill in the blanks as opposed to coming out of nowhere, which for me now is a bit of a intimidating journey. But I hope to go back there one day. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I remember reading one of your poems that you sent me, and there was this beautiful image about like mist, I think, and maybe like a taxi driver. So I stole the mist word and I put it into my poem. So
all
we can
right.
credit you there.
You steal more. I'm going to steal from you. All right. Yeah. So any other questions?
Yeah, maybe like what are some things that you learnt from collaborating or ways that you've like pushed yourself, made yourself write in new ways, or what kind of connections have you found?
Like for me myself, I was always aware of a poetry scene up in Malaysia, but I wasn't too sure where to start from. And now that I like when Lily, you mentioned that you send like our poems to one another and you send your entire zine, now I have like a jumping pad to jump off of. In fact, I'm gonna like go back and steal everybody's work and read it. Yeah, this is how it's just helped the creative process. Like how they say like all art is essentially theft. Like we steal from one another. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but in a way, like for me, it's like you see how someone comes up with their process. You see like, because we're all operating on the same language, English, but it's kind of wonderful like, what we can do with it, with this one medium. And what I've really learned from like for Lily yourself is honestly like how to go and explore the things that are intimate and close to you. Yeah, like because for me, I think my flex, as like I said before, is to push everything out and write outside my inner voice. Yeah, I actually have a very strong inner voice, and it's been really wonderful to see that process, at work behind the scenes and right here as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I honestly feel like it's so intimate to share drafts with somebody. I like never share a draft. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, only see the finished product. So that part of the process was I don't know what the word is. Maybe it was like vulnerable, or I feel like just letting somebody into that part of the process was. I actually surprisingly like quite enjoyed it, and I think like again I sort of mentioned this, but like Dustin's ability to be lyrical and poetic about urban spaces, his ability to like observe very small details in Singapore and in the city. For me, like I would really like to try that, because I think you're right. I do maybe like it's a crutch. In fact, that I like fall back on the body, and so I think like from you thinking about how to do more close observation of the environment around me.
All right, you exercise. You write about the city. I write about myself.
Yeah.
Part two.
Yeah. But I feel like, yeah, actually what Justin mentioned was also sort of what this show is about. I'm really glad to just hear that you now know of a scene in Malaysia and you're able to collaborate and so inspire people in Singapore as well. It's like one of the things I wanted to, I guess, do with this is sort of create tighter, more connections between Singapore and Malaysian poets, because it's pretty wild how we're so close, but I think Singapore poets don't know much about what's happening in Malaysia in terms of literary scene and language scene. And I think there's so many closer connections that we could be building, and so
definitely
exciting to hear. And I feel like and you've come to Singapore and you've seen the scene here, and so you've seen what's going on as well. So that's been really, really great. And
and I've heard about, I guess, a lot of what Dustin has told me about how communities in Singapore are reading each other's work and giving feedback, and I'm like, I love that. I'm so envious.
Maybe one last thing, what do you ask? I didn't phrase this really well when I sent you the question, but something like, what would you like to see or hope from a Southeast Asian literary scene or literary community?
I think for one, it'd be really nice for us to be able to share our writing easier, more easily, because as it is up until before now, I think we kind of have our own spaces, especially in Singapore. After a while, every other month we're seeing the same people again and again, and to know that there are people up north, down south, left and right who we can connect to and share our work with. It's a breath of fresh air, and that's why I really want to hope from this Southeast Asian poetry scene that we can be more interconnected, even as this virus tries to cut all of us apart.
Yeah, exactly that. I think we should definitely be reading each other's work more. And I guess in Southeast Asia, I'm most aware of Malaysian and Singaporean literary scenes, but not really much else. And I feel like Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, all have really thriving literary scenes that I'd love to read more of. And I guess another thing is because in Southeast Asia in general, freedom of expression is quite limited, and I feel like writers are often being persecuted, or maybe they feel like they have to limit what they're allowed to say in their own countries. I'm not sure what it would be like. I don't know if it's a network or just some way to show solidarity with that, and think about ways that we can continue to still be creative and continue to still resist attempts to restrict our expression.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. So actually, we're in December and January. I'm actually going to be running a few more of these.
Okay.
In January, it will be to the Philippines with Linebreaks. Working with Filipino spoken word poets, and in December, tentatively with a different organization, Substation, we are hoping to do one with Indonesian poets.
That's awesome.
Poets.
All right.
Yeah, so stay tuned. But thank you so much for your work, and we had a really, really great conversation. And I feel I learned a lot about craft and different ways of writing and different ways of getting inspired. So thank you so much, and hope you can both stay in touch as well.
Yeah, we will. Thank you so much, Steph, for thinking of me and for bringing us together.
Thank you. And yes, one last thing. Where can people find your work?
Where can people find my work? Not many places, I guess, which is unfortunate. You can. Why don't you DM me on Twitter? I'm a little Lily Bean, and I can send you the zine that I sold.
What's your Twitter handle?
It's at a little Lily Bean.
At a little Lily. Okay, I'll be sharing that later on.
All right.
As for myself, I've been featured in a couple of journals. You can look at the Singapore Rimo one. You can also look at the Quarterly Literary Review Singapore, the Eunoia Review, some tentative ones in the works. I'm not sure. If you try Googling my name, this guy from Hawaii shows up. I don't know what to do about that, but yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the incredible pieces. And but yeah, so stay in touch, keep writing, and I'll see you all in a bit. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Steph.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Fade away now.
And that was okay. I'll just shift this. Let's pretend Dustin has left the room. They'll just be really quiet. But yeah, so that was Dustin and Lily, and which brings us now to our final pair of the evening. And I'm really excited for them. So welcoming, first of all, another person that I met through Singapore Rimo, who has just like blown me away in Singapore Rimo, the one and also the person who is the furthest away performing his work. Please welcome up Wahid Al Mamun.
Hello. Hi.
Oh, hi. Welcome.
Yes.
And yeah, how are you? How have you been?
I'm okay. I'm good. In the time that the show is between the time the show started and now, the sun has risen. So that's
Oh,
good
wow.
news always. And yeah, very timely. And yeah, I'm very excited and very honored to be here today.
Cool. And I'll just read out a little bit more about you. So Wahid is Singaporean poet of Bangladeshi origin whose writing is centered around migration, identity, and his parents. What would Freud say? His poetry has been found on various Singapore Rimo journals, QLRS, as well as several anthologies such as Food Republic and 700 Lines. His poetry has also won an honorable mention at the 2018 Hawker Prize for Southeast Asian Poetry. And he is currently an anthropology major at the University of Chicago. All right. And I'm very excited to hear your work. So you can take it away, Wahid.
Yeah. So fun fact, Dinesh and I are actually reading each other's pieces because of how our writing process ended up and how the prompts ended up, and we can talk about this later. But this is just going to be a shout out for like how absolutely amazing I find Dinesh's work. And yeah, and this poem is called "Was There a Time You Didn't Want to Be Brown?" I am listening to my music and I think of all the times I skipped a Tamil or Hindi song on the radio, frantically hitting shuffle when I have a non-Indian guest in my car, not wanting them to have to listen to the music I actually like, not subjecting them to my brownness. I want to take drives with your hand holding mine, our fingers clasped over the handbrake, my other hand holding the steering wheel for dear life, not wanting to let go of either for fear of the worst. I want this moment to last forever, a never-ending road trip to bliss and happiness. I am tired of not enough sleep, of self-flagellating myself to hyper-productivity, the next course, the next book, the next, never completing, always purchasing. Striving to tell myself and the world that I am worthy and whole. I want to go back in time to Taekwondo class and speak to the little Chinese boy who asked me why I was black and handle it in a way that his parents should have. Tell him the differences in shades and explain the presence of melanin, to look at the seeds of bias in his eye and stop it before it evolves into racism. I am standing in front of the mirror and not recognizing my body. How long I have lived in this vessel, and yet I am not always in it. Trying to stay in the realm of the mind and of thought, staying away from the physicality of my being and looking myself in the belly. I want to stop watching white people in porn. I want to decolonize my relationship to other bodies and myself. I want to find completion and satisfaction in my own hands before I find it in another's. And find a way to be truly worthy of mutual intimacy and ecstasy. I am frustrated that there are not enough brown people in spaces and on platforms, that we are made to compete with one another, and the only times we are seen is when we are angry or performing our anger. I am done explaining my identity in bite-sized pieces. putting it into chewable tablets that you can swallow. Because I am more than one thing. I am more than brown. I am hopeful and hopeless, sad and happy, frustrated and excited, sometimes all at the same time. I tried to hold my little brown boy self with empathy and repeatedly tell him, "You are loved, and you are amazing. You are brilliant. And while the world may not be designed for boys like you and me, you don't have to listen to their rules. We can make our own, just like playtime."
And thank you so much, Wahid. And once again, he was reading Dinesha's poem, and just really, really excited to hear more and see more and learn more about your process. All right. And so now I will bring on Dinesha to read Wahid's piece.
Hello, hello.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you. What can I mean, I know you're off screen and everything, but dude, it's so different to hear your words in somebody else's voice and just process and feel the emotion. It's a very different feeling.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we did that.
Yeah. I would really love that. And so I first met Dinesha at the Georgetown Literary Festival, the Poetry Slam, which he won as the champion. And I was the judge, but
yes,
I think that I'm not biased. I mean, talent speaks for itself. But I'll now read a little bit about Dinesha. So Dinesha Karthigesu is a Kuala Lumpur-based multidisciplinary storyteller currently working on his third theatre play. He's deeply invested in telling queer and Malaysian stories while holding space for conversations on identity and creativity. He's the host of the Creative Curry podcast and Malaysia's first and only National Poetry Slam champion. Dinesha has been featured at schools, universities, and festivals, and in 2019 co-created his first visual arts installation and featured in an in-flight magazine, and his work has been turned into a comic strip. So far, in 2020, his work has been featured on HowlRound Theatre Commons, Vice India, and Vice Asia. You can find him online at dinesha.com. And here he is, reading Wahid's poem.
Thank you so much, Steph.
Wow.
Belly of the Beast by Wahid Al-Mamun. Things have been awkward lately. Here in Chicago, I have taken to sleeping naked under the covers, and every morning, when I tumble out of bed, the first thing I observe on the wall mount mirror on the back of my door is the soft paunch of last night's dinner rising like a brown fog over my crotch. I attempt to recollect a breathing exercise my friend told me about 5 years ago. I observe the beast of my body melt into itself. Breathe. Hold out. For a second, somewhere in the hold, the brown body is taut. The sunlight comes in at an angle through the north-facing window and kisses my butt. And in the golden glow, I can convince myself that I am beautiful. I am 160 pounds beautiful. I am honey and stovetop cocoa and chocolate chip cookies beautiful. I am Dave Patel beautiful. And I wish in this moment nothing more than to be a ghost. To drift along Woodland Avenue, to do my groceries in a big coat and a bigger sweater. I want people to see me without seeing me. I want them to assemble my eyes and my hair without the knowledge of the rest of my abominable body. How it always feels like I'm carrying a sack of rice where my gut should be. I want them to think I am beautiful. At least a 6.5 out of 10. I want to hold this breath for so long. I drain all the color from my skin so the folks at the airport don't have to go through all the effort to make sure I am desirable, because now I don't have to stumble over myself at immigration trying to itemize all my excess baggage. How happy I am to be number distended from body. How happy I am to want to disappear This is the point when the balloon of my fantasy is punctured and the body inflates itself once more with great resentment like a poem that has overstayed its welcome. And to be perfectly honest, I want nothing more than to crush this poem into a tight ball and throw it away, because I am sick of presenting this poem to other people only to hear I need to trim the fat. I am sick of presenting myself to other people only to hear I need to trim the fat. And I want to drown in the turning weather, for this is no way for someone like me to be. And this is no way to feel desire, to learn to be content with the mirror image of happiness. Maybe I'm sick, and maybe I'm not. I attempt to recollect another self-love exercise the same friend told me and wrap myself in an embrace. I try my best to pay no mind to the divot that emerges in the middle of my chest when I fold my arm in an X, that wretched trench between my room and the rest of the day. I gather the dirty laundry from the floor and place it in my hamper, then pull on a fresh pair of boxers. Oh, Steph, you're muted.
Again, yeah, thank you so much, Dinesha, for breathing like such a different kind of light into this already incredible piece.
Yes.
And and now I know you both have another piece you're gonna read together, and I will let you both take it away.
All right, let's do this. Brown Space Prayer by Dinesha Kartikeso and Wahid Al-Mamun. I'm writing this poem to tell you something. I saw a brown woman on an ad yesterday, a printout at the kopitiam I was at. I was shocked. She was the only one on it, and no, it was not a Deepavali ad. It wasn't even a One Malaysia or Three Races ad. It was just her. And it made me pause. Brown person. I couldn't help but think of all the ways we exist publicly.
Attention, relevant Bukit Raffles, Oxford, PSC track civil servant. I am writing this poem because I wish to lodge a complaint. I am writing this poem because I wish to lodge a complaint about the lack of brown spaces and amenities made available for folk like myself.
What are the stories told about us where we actually matter? What are the spaces where, unlike our asuras, we are not demonized? What are the positions of power and respect we command?
Because honest to God, aku penat lah. Because you like to say equal opportunity and meritocracy, you publish diversity reports so you can tell everyone else that Singapore got no racism problem. What's the word you like again? Post-racial? Penat. Because you think every GRC got one token brown person, then okay. Parliament got Shamugam lah, Taman lah, Masagos lah, Maliki lah, Puchiceri lah, then okay. But then Raisa is not okay just because she name-dropped Angela Davis?
Where can we actually openly and honestly speak? What are the platforms we are allowed to be on? The times we are seen as human?
Not. Because you confirm will tell me Singapore is both safe and multicultural. Safe for who? Last time the migrant worker all hoo-ha, then you deport them. Until now, they also kena extortion, contract substitution, kena high surveillance, kena coronavirus.
The times I am seen as human.
You say, okay, what? At least they got safe space to sleep and eat and relax after work. I say, show me where the space is. I built the safe space beside your home, then I ask you if it's safe. The safe space only safe because the safe space is not here? Breathe. Hold. Out.
So, what do we want? What is a brown space?
Brown space is to break free from a line of italics. Brown space is to add your name to the dictionary.
I imagine A bunch of us getting ready in our saris and jippas, choosing jewelries and tying veshtis, all decked out in our finest wear, the kind we save for weddings. A whole night of tying pleats and talking shit.
Brown space is to wear kurtas for Eid.
It could be done a lot faster if we chose to focus on the task at hand, but time waits for us and lets us pass. This moment is more important than any to-do list or checkbox. There are no forms to write in or ethnicities to fill up. There is just us.
Brown space is rejecting your technocratic fix.
Lying down on beds and holding each other, literally and metaphorically, safe space and making space.
Brown space is this moment.
When Surya arrives, we look up in Namaskaram, put the final cold touches and groggy eyes, and shape our hair. When ready, we bid the room goodbye. It is time.
Brown space is to tell your friends where your parents came from.
We head out to the best dosa shop we know for breakfast. We bypass the temple and head in search of a different kind of offering. A prasadam of chutneys and curries. In this moment, we are infinite.
Because brown space is gulab jamun.
More than the melanin in our skin, more than the caste histories of our ancestors, we are more than the ships we came on.
Brown space is to delete the footnotes and to write the damn story yourself.
We are young and old and in between, the right age to live and the wrong age to die.
Brown space is to live between the lines.
The poets and actors and dancers and teachers and doctors and engineers and cleaners and contract workers.
Brown space is to not right-click on the red lines.
The movers and shakers in spaces that are not ready for us. The stages not yet lit with incense, the platforms not yet built with camphor, the doors not yet opened for aartis.
A world where we don't have to tell you shit. Where we can talk about things and have people get it. Where we can talk about how Mr. Lim once called me a camel fucker in secondary school and have people be angry for me.
Where we can talk about the trauma of having to be perfect and have others feel the same way. Where we are seen every day, every year, where we can be held and allowed to breathe.
Where we are told that we can fuck up and mess up and still be okay.
Where we don't have to be perfect.
Where we make sense.
Where we can be messy, glorious, imperfect, brown human bodies.
Where
we
can be.
Wow, that was incredible. Thank you so much. That was really, really powerful. And some of the comments that we've gotten, people are saying, yeah, it was incredible, really, really like raw, really beautiful. Yeah, so thank you, both of you. And yeah, before we get into the conversation here, how are both of you doing and coping in Malaysia, in the US, respectively?
You can go first.
I was gonna wait. I was like, why go first? Why go first?
No, you go first. Yeah, it's fine.
I'm okay. I think I had a conversation with a friend today where I've never realized how much the word capacity has entered my vocabulary this year, and how I can have conversations with people and be like, "Hi, my capacity very low right now. Go away." and it's and it's also making me think, is have I not noticed like the boundaries of my capacity before this year? Or is it like new language? Or is it all of the above, right? I suddenly am aware of capacity. I suddenly have the language to articulate, and I guess even the permission to articulate. I think with the pandemic, there's a lot of permission. A lot of people are more forgiving. most of the time and being like, I mean, let's be fair, for everyone who's watching, like Steph sent me an email to connect the two of us, and I took like 2 weeks to respond. Until Steph was like, I'm putting you all in a Facebook group, start talking now. And because it's just like, I just couldn't, right? And so I think I'm okay, but I'm just very conscious of capacity personally.
Yeah. I mean, I like that point about capacity because, yeah, I think something that I really appreciated about our collaboration was we really gave ourselves like a lot of room. I remember there's 1 week where we were like, yeah, we're gonna come up with like 3 poems each by the end of this week. And when the end of the week rolled around, we were like, we both wrote like a half poem. And that's like fine, you know, like it turned out fine in the end. And it's just like, I think something that I really appreciated was like, just the respect we have for each other's time and just be like, yeah, I'm not feeling it this week. I'm really swamped or whatever. And the other person's like, yeah, sure, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, more generally, how am I doing? I'm personally doing fine. I'm in Chicago, which like most of the US is not doing fine. Chicago especially is doing really poorly with the coronavirus. I think it's the scary stat right now is 1 in 10 people in Chicago have the virus. That's very scary. But also the scarier thing is like that's kind of normal for like American cities at the moment. Just because of the way it's been handled here, it's been like atrocious. But where I am right now, it's fine. I'm also just in my apartment all day and like haven't left this whole Thanksgiving week. So it's like that's been fine. And yeah, I think I've come to grips with like capacity a lot more in the same way that Dinesha has, in the sense that yeah, I've been renegotiating my relationship with like productivity and like what it entails to be like have a good day or a good week or a good month, you know, and like is it mean like, I've done all these readings, I've like read all these books, I've like written this much, and I'm trying to figure out the fact that that's not necessarily the case.
And but yeah, I feel like both of you really hit on like a really good point that how weirdly the pandemic, as like horrible as it is, in a strange way, it's sort of made us rethink a lot of things about our own lives and just like what we think is like of value, I feel. And I definitely agree with like the whole capacity thing. And I just wanted to ask about the process because I feel like both of you, I mean, in spite, you did talk a lot about how like some weeks you couldn't write much, but in the end you came up with a piece each and a duet piece.
Honestly, I don't know how that happened. Yeah.
I think it's just like I think it came out of the fact that, you know, when Wahid said there was a week where we tried. So there was the first conversation where we jumped on a Google Meet call, and it was and I think that conversation helped a lot, because that conversation, I still remember we had questions for each other. We were like, okay, we connected over biryani, and we're like, okay, we're going to do biryani poems. And then I think we talked about our relationship to being brown and how I tend to be a bit more hopeful and Wahid's not so much. And so then we threw the other person, so the prompt. So like mine was, I think Wahid said, was there a time you didn't want to be brown? Hence the first poem. And then I threw it back at him and I was like, you know, talk about hopefulness, you know? And then we started talking about brown space. And then I think that week where we really couldn't write, and then we had a conversation where we were like, you know what, let's just jump on these calls and write. So I think like 3 Mondays in a row we met up. So for me it was Monday afternoon, for Wahid was Sunday night. We met up and we would spend about an hour and a half, but the first 30 minutes or so, it's actually just on camera together, just writing. We would just write. Just write for like 30, 45 minutes straight and and then be like, share and hear from each other and then build. And the final poem was actually, we struggled with the final poem so much because we tried to go with like petition to government kind of vibes. And then finally, we realized that we each had an older poem that we brought back. And so the final poem is actually a merging of 2 new poems, one from each of us, and 2 old poems, one from each of us. Wow. So it was 4 poems merged into one to make the final poem.
Yeah. Really like a good team effort there. I think the funny thing about the first 2 poems especially is how we set each other like our own styles of modes of like being, right? Like I was like a lot more like interrogative and therefore like sad about being brown, and vice versa for Dinesha, where he's more optimistic. But when we set each other the prompts, like I don't know, my poem was like really not happy at all. The one that I wrote, that Dinesh read. And I think for him as well, like the one I read was like, yeah, he talked about all these moments where he didn't want to be brown, but at the same time, it's just imbued with so much optimism. I think that was something very like, I think it's very generative, and I think that's one of the reasons why you also chose to read each other's poems as well, just because like I tried to write a happy poem when told to do so and couldn't, so I'm just gonna read the happy poem and like at least give me that. So I think that was a nice there are nice moments of like there are nice moments where it's like both filled with great tension and like between our different ways of being, but also like there's so much going on that's like when I read his poem, for instance, I'm like, yeah, this could have happened to me as well, and like yeah, so I think that was like very generative from this entire process.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and I really struggled with sad. I was like, try to be sad, and I'm like, optimism.
I know, like for me, I was like, okay, I'm gonna write the sad because A, it's easier, and B, it's gonna be like my setup for the happy. But then I finished my sad part, I'm like, yeah, this is like fine as a poem. There's enough there that people can glean on to be optimistic about, but like there's a lot there. It's like I just like I can't do the Volta. I can't be like, however, ... be happy. I just couldn't do it. Like I couldn't bring myself to do it, which is kind of revealing, I guess.
But yeah, I mean, so I feel like, no, I definitely understand where both of you are coming from. I really love that challenge of like one of you has to write like in a different way that you're not used to, not comfortable with. And I guess I know, okay, so Dinesh, I saw you wrote really, really amazing like post about the process of collaborating with Wahid. So I guess I wanted to ask a bit about that. How did you both find the process of working with each other?
So I think, first of all, I think it's so fascinating that you paired us because you chose the one person who's not in Singapore and paired me with Wahid. But I think for me, the reason I found that so serendipitous is the fact that Wahid, in that time span that I was talking to Wahid was like my fourth Chicago conversation collaboration.
That's wild.
That was wild.
I cannot believe it, but it was all happening at the same time. It was all Chicago, and like it just kept coming up again and again and again. I was like, Steph is psychic. Like
not even Chicago, right? It was like literally like Hyde Park,
right? Like
the same neighborhood.
Yeah. So I'm just like, what? So the fact that you paired us was so fascinating, and I think while Wyatt and I were talking, I've been sort of having conversations with people about body. I realize a lot of my poems tend to be here or heart. I don't step into body enough, whether it's performing or even when I talk about work. And I think even more now with the pandemic and everything being online, I'm sitting on a chair. I don't even need to be in body, right? When I'm performing something. And that happened like a thread that kept coming out, body, 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 body. And so when I met Wahid, and then Wahid was like, White's poem Belly of the Beast, that was so in the body. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to confront my body now. And so for me, that was the biggest realization of this process. Like I was talking Wahid and like reading all his older work, and I was like, ooh, and understanding where he was coming from and his experiences. And so for me, the experience was really just a reminder of the presence of my body in spaces and how I incorporate body into my work. And to be very conscious of that, because my body cannot be ignored as much as I might think that way or other people might think that way. So for me, that was the biggest like revelation, the way that Wahid also, this is possibly like a massive credit to Singaporean poets. Y'all are very good with form. I feel like half the time I'm a fake ass poet because like y'all Duplex and Ghazal and Pantone and Quartet, and I'm just like, I don't know what any of those things mean, but I'm poet, yes. So I love that Wahid's very conscious of his line breaks. Like every single piece of his work I've seen, he knows exactly when to play with the line breaks. I don't think about that enough, but working with him is making me very conscious. Where do lines begin? Where do lines end? So I think for me is such a experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely because of the fact that we write very differently. Like I had a similar moment, but in reverse, where I think a lot of the qualities of Dinesh's work is like in its like spoken potential, right? When you read it and like the way that you pace the reading and like to have it exist as like a oral thing, so much so as a written thing. Whereas I don't know, I've mostly written most of my the last 5 or 6 years as like to focus on like what it looks like on the page. And like this experience was really nice for me in part because this is a throwback to like when I first got into poetry, which is through slam. Steph, I don't know if you remember, but like I did like I don't remember what it was, the under 18 or under 21 slam like in 2014.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was like way back. And yeah, I was like, I don't know, I was 16 or like 15. I was just like trying my hand at that sort of stuff. And I enjoyed that, but I sort of like grew apart from it and was more enamored with like the way that it existed on like paper and like just poetry in general. And so to really like come around here and like really focus on like what things would sound like as like spoken out loud, and especially that third piece where it's like a lot of it's also as much about dramatic timing and like the way that things intervene with each other, etc., etc. And yeah, so I think that was a very healthy exercise for me and a way to like sort of like brush off some of that, like some of those like experiences I had like all those years ago. And yeah, the fact that Dinesh is also a playwright, like ridiculously like talented as well, like just all these like different things that he's good at, and like just having that sort of like expertise in the editing process for that last piece, and like figuring out how to like, I think we were really struggling with like, you know, with 4 poems, like how to like sort of seamlessly put them together. And like I think that was very useful to have that sort of experience. And yeah, it was I remember this happened like less than a week ago, like this past Monday or Sunday, wherever you are in the world. And just sitting there, for me it was like 10:30 at night, and just like sitting there, like I was like almost like dozing off, but just pushing through, and like the end product was like greater than the sum of its parts. And I was like, wow, this is great, and it's great to like perform this. Yeah.
Brilliant. And but yeah, so thank you so much for all this. And I guess the question was, do you have any questions for each other?
I do. Yeah, so I guess I just like venturing further on this idea of like body, and like because of the way body appears within your work and how like physical you are when you think of when you're writing and things like that. I guess the question I'm wondering is that how do you take care of yourself when you put so much of yourself into your work? You know,
That's
like
a
your physical.
wonderful question. Because
You know?
I wish I had the answer, but I don't.
Okay.
Really.
But yeah, I'm curious, like, you know, I guess maybe questions you have on that idea, things you're thinking about would work. Maybe there isn't an answer per se, but I'm just, because I think when I think of body in poetry, it feels very vulnerable, and sometimes that's hard. And how do you heal yourself? How do you take care of yourself once you've done that, right? Once you've shared that part of yourself. So do you have ideas on that?
I think it's something I'm still sort of figuring out, because I think as much as you said that you're locating the body in a lot of my older work, I think it's only very recently where I'm really like focusing on it as like a key unit of like my poetry. And therefore, and as you've rightly pointed out, that's a lot more vulnerable, and that's a lot like harder to write about. Just not technically, but just like, yeah, writing poetry can be draining, and I think that's something I'm still grappling with. And the consequence of that, one of the consequences of that is like over the last couple of years, my productivity when it comes to like creative output has like really gone down. And I think that's a good place to locate it, actually. So I don't have a good answer, mostly because I don't have a good answer for myself. And I think that's something I still have to negotiate. And just, I will say though that I think it's interesting that this sort of concern popped up. And I think it's just because of how I noticed that, like, living in Singapore and then transplanting myself to the US, but in both contexts being sort of like the other almost, and like being like a minority in both contexts, is something that like makes me hyper aware of my physical fact, you know, like it's just what it is for me, and I think it's important to write about that. So I think the solution to feeling burnt out and overwhelmed by the writing of poetry is not to like stop writing or to stop focusing on the body, because I think it's important. I do think, however, it should. I think the way forward for me might just be like to imbue your like prompt, right? To view it with more optimism, and like somehow I'm still figuring that out. Like I have many years ahead of me to figure that out, hopefully. But yeah, I think that's where I am for that. And I mean, I don't have a good answer for that question, but it's a good question to ask and makes me think right now. My question for you is, I think in a more practical level, how do you do it? Like all these like wonderful things that you're doing at the same time. I'm just like, I don't think envious. It's like one of those like productive envy, like moments of productive envy where I'm like, I'm envious, but I don't like hate you as a person. I'm just like, oh, like where did you go? Like, yeah. I think that's one question that I have.
Okay. I think for me, when it comes to making, what has been very helpful this year is the containers that exist for this work to be made. So like the only reason I think even like despite the pandemic, I've been able to work on my third play is because at the end of last year, me and four other playwrights, theatre makers came together to shout out to they're called the Tulis group. Shout out to Ian, Trina, Leisha, and Modi. And we came together at the end of Sorry, did I disappear?
A little bit. I think you're saying you and the other playwrights.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back now. You're back now.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so me and the five other playwrights, theatre makers, shout out to Ian, Leisha, Trina, and Modi. We kind of got together and said, what happens if we spend the entire of 2020 working on each of our plays? So because we realized there was a gap in original Malaysian theatre, and then we decided we'll come up with 5 different ideas. So we each have 5 full-fledged plays by the end of 2020. And so we entered 2020 with that energy that we were going to spend the whole year working on a single piece of work with readings and like feedback sessions from each other and other theatre makers and things like that. And despite like the pandemic, we just switched everything online, and we know we're still like fine-tuning the final bits of work, but each of us has a brand new play. There are 5 new full-length main stage plays that have been produced because we built this before the pandemic happened. So I think for me, what has been helpful to create is just building those spaces. And this bigger process was built by me, Lily, and Lily Jamaluddin, who's on the call with us, and Adriana Manan. Last year, we did something known as the 100 Days Project, where the 3 of us, together with 3 other poets, spent 100 days working on work together. And sometimes it's about building those containers and spaces where if you feel like you cannot hold yourself accountable, have other people hold you accountable. And that has been working really well, despite the pandemic, because you are kind of responsible to other people too. And that helps, I think, for me, collaboration. Yeah.
Steph, I think you're mute.
Oh, Steph, muted.
I've learned a lot by just like in this conversation with both of you. I think, okay, last question, and last question of the night, I guess. And I think we had like a Q&A thing, but no one's really submitted questions. There's still a bit of time. But yeah, last question of the night. I guess, yeah, how would you want to build on this kind of connection? So what would like a Southeast Asian like literary scene or community look like to you, or what would you hope from it? Or what would you hope it could look like?
I think something that I really appreciated from this experience is how, like, I don't know, like, I appreciate this opportunity a lot in bringing Singaporean and Malaysian poets in conversation, but at the same time, it's made me realize that it's sort of an artificial category almost. I mean, it's supported by its own ecosystem, so in that way, it's like very real. But at the same time, I don't think my work is very different from Dinesha's, and like I am also one of the 3 Singaporean poets here. Yet here I am, like it's like 7:44 a.m. in Chicago, you know. So it's like there are lots of like these peculiarities of space that I've appreciated more like having like come here to study, obviously, and like still being involved in Singapore and stuff. And the great irony is like I've as much as I've been talking about like a drop in productivity this year, I've been very blessed to be like involved in a fair number of Singaporean projects, and a lot of which has forced me to like in like the prompts or like the events that I am at, like a lot of it's forced me to confront my conceptions of like home and like location. And I think just extending that back to your question, Steph, I think a lot of it is to realize that yeah, we shouldn't be so bound to like our literary canon, our literary scene, and like just reading Dinesha's work in general and like the work that I read of his today. A lot of it's like so transmutable and like there are very universal experiences and regional experiences, I guess. I think some of the other people were talking about this earlier, and just yeah, I think and I really appreciated this opportunity because it helped me realize that. And I think that's a way forward, just to be more open, I guess, to collaboration with other people and like to have like freshness in like your perspective, while also recognizing that your perspective is not all that unique or like separate or isolated from the experiences of other people in the region. Yeah.
I think for me, it's just sort of acknowledging what this year has been, right? With like racial equity riots and a lot of people, even in Asia and Southeast Asia, having to confront things like anti-Blackness within our systems, within our bodies, within our thought processes. I think when I think of a Southeast Asian literary space, I feel like the politics is not thought of, like the politics of bodies. In the sense, for example, like as much as we can like say, oh, Southeast Asia, all of us together, I think, let me just use a Malay body, for example. A Malay body in Malaysia is a majority body, but a Malay body in Singapore is a minority body. But the moment you open up online, all these spaces collide. So if people are thinking of programming and they're like, oh, okay, I want the people who are not normally seen, then it gets tricky when it crosses these geographical borders. And I think I feel like as someone who programs myself, I think that's something I'm finding myself to be very, 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 very conscious of, and having to think of those things to be like, if I program this person, what does this mean within intersectionality? Is this person normally not seen? Is this person a darker skinned body? Is this person a minority? Is this person a woman or femme or trans or non-binary? Like, how do these intersections play in my programming and who I platform? Because I think that's important, because I think a lot of times we play the minority card so fast that we don't realize that like at the end of the day, as much as Wahid and I are brown men, we are minorities in different spaces, but we're still men, you know? And that also takes precedence from, like, say, a brown female body or a brown trans woman body or a brown non-binary body. And so I think when I think of a Southeast Asian descent, I wish we collaborate more, but I wish we're also like hyper aware of the politics of that, like whose voices are not heard and how do we platform these people, these other voices. And sometimes they're our friends, you know, which is uncomfortable, because then people go like, you're just platforming your friends. But I'm like, sometimes my friends don't get places to speak because they are these bodies, right? So just to be aware of all of this, not easy, still trying to figure it out. But I feel that's important to think about.
Yeah, really important to have like those conversations to begin with, I think. But yeah, thank you so much, Dinesha and Wahid. That was incredible sort of performances and conversations. And now we actually do have some questions from the audience. But now I'd like to bring up everyone into this space. And maybe you can all answer the last couple of questions, maybe in your pairs. Okay, so someone asked, Karine Tan, who's been really, really helpful in helping us. She's from the Substation, really helpful in helping us to write about this, to market this. And so she created an amazing artist statement about this show. And I'm sure you can find it somewhere. I can't remember where. But so she asks, she says, really enjoyed hearing the creation process of all the poets. And a question, I'm interested to hear how the collaborators have come together to decide on the form. Did the form or imagery content come first in the discussion writing? And the other one, maybe you could answer them both. Hearing how the prompts differ for each poet, has the pandemic limited or opened up your writing in some ways? So first, did the form or content come first, and how has the pandemic affected? You can choose to answer both or one of them.
Who goes?
Okay, whoever wants to go first. Okay, maybe we could answer in one by one.
I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
Right, for Lily and I think we kind of tackled the content bit first. Like, like Steph sent us a prompt and, that's all we had to go on, and we kind of just sprung off from there. And I think also a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of us, when we write, I think we think of the content first over the form sometimes. Like, say I want to write a poem about porridge. I think of what porridge means to me first before I think of, like how does the concept of porridge translates itself into form. Yeah, I hope that answers the question, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Who wants to answer next?
I can go.
I'm gonna go ahead.
May, go.
Go ahead.
No, May go.
Okay, May go.
I was just feeling the awkward silence.
Okay, I think when it came to me and Margaret, we received our prompts, and I was jotting down notes as to what a new being could look like. But then I was thought about it, and I was like, okay, since if we're meant to collaborate, it would be kind of cool if we're talking about contemporary things with a sort of traditional form. So I said, Margaret, hey, how about we balas pantun? And that's basically where it started. So yeah.
May actually wrote this really clever thing in like our doc, which was like, is embracing a new thing necessarily a denial of old things, like true or false? And I thought that was like such a good question. So that ended up being something I was thinking about a lot in relation to form as well. So like, I guess a little bit more like information, like the duplex was invented by Jericho Brown as a way to kind of explode the sonnet, like this super traditional form, to make it into everything else at once. And thinking about like this year, which feels like it hasn't ended at all, I wanted to explode the exploded sonnet, so it's not even slightly 14 lines long. So thinking about form really started me out there.
It's so funny that you guys talked about the duplex as well. I remember in the reading when you guys were doing the duplex, like in my head, I was like, this is so weird, because literally we were also talking about Jericho Brown's duplex. And especially in that last poem when we were trying to figure out how to like mesh things together, and that's sort of like echoing previous lines that happened with Jericho Brown's piece and your pieces as well, Margaret and May. That's sort of like the ethos we sort of took on when trying to mash pieces together. And I think for us, ultimately, similar to what Dustin said, like ultimately it's the theme that sort of emerged first, and the form sort of emerged from there. And like for our last poem specifically, because it ended up being I think we set it out for it to be a conversation of sorts. And I think ideally we'd have wanted to have had an actual conversation, right, Dinesh? Like where like the poem sort of stopped being a poem and became a conversation. But I think having the realization that our poems are very similar, and like poems that we dug up from like 2 years ago could like fit seamlessly into like this final product and be put in conversation with each other, and like just having the sort of like respect and understanding of the other poets' work was something that's very central in like that deciding what the form would look like.
I rarely think of form when I'm writing, but except for when like I'm doing something like a duplex, like Jericho's work. And exactly like what Wahid said, the instinct for the last poem, for me at least, and it was like a trusting of that instinct, because the first instinct was to throw that one of the poems in, but I kept resisting that instinct, and then eventually that was the poem that was exactly needed. And then the second instinct was what would happen if it was a dialogue, which was the first thing I ever posed to Wahid, even through email, just because I've just been in so I guess, theater scene mode, like playwriting and thinking of conversations between people that I couldn't, I just wondered what that would look like as in poetry if we applied the sense of conversation with the last piece, especially. How do poets talk, right? Like where does the poetry break? Where is it conversation? Those are just questions we were asking. I think to answer the second question also, the pandemic opened up my writing is that the pandemic has allowed me spaces to access workshops and collaborations across geographical boundaries, which I appreciate because I've learned from people I would have never accessed if not for the pandemic. Like I've been able to attend writing workshops from like facilitators who are South Asian, for example, who are in the US, who generously started running writing workshops. And so I did a 10-week writing workshop, which was like the best thing ever for me this year because I was just in a space where nobody knew who I was. I didn't know anyone, and I just got to write. And that was nice because no preconceived baggage, nobody knows who you are. You just got to like flex your writing muscle. So I think for me, the pandemic is access.
And Lily.
Yeah. Wait, can I see the second question?
Yeah. So the second question, how has the pandemic limited or opened up your writing in some ways?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if the pandemic honestly has really changed the way that I write, but I guess, how can I answer this question in an interesting way? But I think sometimes I spend like really long periods of time not writing, and I think like I think I just feel like words are coming back to me. God, let's skip me.
All right. Okay. Any last thoughts on the question?
I think when it comes to the second question, like Dinesha, I also have access to other online conventions. I went to FireCon and I went to the what's the thing, to the SSW Nebula Awards for the first time this year on a Substation ticket. It was GER 9. But when it comes to writing, I think the pandemic has sort of encouraged me to look at more specific events in my writing. Like instead of writing in general terms, I'm looking at like very small incidents, in very small, very intimate incidences. So things like, you know, birds in the garden, moths flying onto the train. You know, what sort of sitcoms you will watch with your werewolf girlfriend. It has become very very personal and very small and intimate in that way.
Yeah, thank you. And but yeah, so thank you all. This brings us to the end. We have run over time a bit, but that's fine. But yeah, so thank you all for being a part of this. It's a huge honor to see what you've all created and everything that all the conversations we've had. So for all of you who are watching this, currently this will be available on YouTube and on Facebook for a very long time. So you can tell your friends who've missed this to go and click on the links. And but yeah, thank you all so much. Again, it's been a huge honor getting to bring people together. So thank you to the Substation. Thank you to the National Gallery. Thank you to all of you for putting in all your time and effort into creating this work and to taking the risk and just like coming together during this very strange time. So the next show, okay, so we're gonna have another show that's not brought to you by Substation. It's actually sponsored by the Singlet Station, and so we are going to be working with amazing group of queer poets from Indonesia. So that's going to be to Indonesia with Linebreaks, and it's still coming together. I'll let you know how it goes. That will be on December 28th, about a month from now, and in January, also brought to you by the Substation and the National Gallery, we have to the Philippines with Linebreaks. We pair against 3 Singapore poets with 3 poets from the Philippines. And so yeah, keep your eyes out for that. But yeah, so thank you. This has been an incredible night. Thank you to Dinesha, Wahid, Dustin, Lily, May, and Margaret for putting your work out there, for putting yourselves out there. Thank you. And this has been me. This has been Spoken Bird. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steph.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Yeah, take care. Right.